Imagine you're standing in this bustling coffee shop, right?
Yeah, the absolute classic scenario.
Yeah, like maybe you're in Madrid or Tokyo or Paris, and the espresso machine is hissing in the background. People are chatting all around you.
It's a high-sensory environment.
Exactly. And the barista turns to you and asks a completely, perfectly straightforward question.
And the funny thing is, you actually know the vocabulary.
You do. You know exactly what you want to order. But before you can actually open your mouth to speak, there's this tiny, exhausted, overworked translator in your brain that just insists on reviewing the sentence first.
Right. It intercepts the whole process.
It grabs those foreign words, drags them all the way back into your native language just to make absolutely sure you understood them perfectly.
Uh-huh.
Then it constructs your reply in your native tongue and then frantically searches for the foreign equivalents to translate it back out.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
And by the time this entire mental gymnastics routine is finished, the barista is just like looking at you like you've forgotten your own name. The moment has entirely passed.
You're just standing there.
Yeah, totally paralyzed.
It's a really profound sort of cognitive paralysis.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it is universally recognized by literally anyone who has ever tried to acquire a second language as an adult.
Oh, 100%.
You're trapped.
Yeah.
You're trapped in this massive gap between intellectually knowing a language on paper.
Like passing a test.
Exactly, passing a written test
Yeah.
and actually using it out there in the wild.
You are essentially a hostage to your own internal processing speed. And that exact bottleneck, that agonizing pause where your brain just flat out refuses to operate directly in the new language, that is exactly what we are dismantling today.
It's the biggest hurdle.
It really is. So welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to crack what is arguably the absolute holy grail of language learning.
How to completely stop mentally translating.
Yes, and start fundamentally thinking in a new language.
It is the ultimate transition. I mean, it is the definitive line between being a lifelong student of a language.
Or you're just looking at it from the outside.
Right, constantly studying it from the outside looking in versus being a true user of the language, where it actually becomes this active living tool that you inhabit.
To guide us through this transition today, we are diving into a really highly practical session. It was led by two language educators, Luna and Leo, from the Mr. English Daily channel.
They have some fantastic material.
They really do. And what is so refreshing about their specific approach is that they aren't, giving us complex grammar matrices or these intense, grueling memorization schedules.
Well, no flashcards here.
Right. They are offering 6 very specific, actionable behavioral tweaks. It's essentially a roadmap of everyday strategies designed to gradually force your brain to just abandon that tiny internal translator.
And it culminates in something really special.
It does. It culminates in a 2-minute morning routine that they argue is an absolute game changer. Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the architecture of the problem itself.
The root cause.
Yeah, why is that internal translator so incredibly deeply entrenched in our minds in the first place?
Well, it ultimately comes down to cognitive load and really our brain's evolutionary hardwiring for safety.
Safety, like physical safety.
Neurological safety, yeah. Your native language is this incredibly efficient, high-speed neural network. And Luna and Leo use a brilliant comparison here. They describe your native tongue as a comfortable room you've lived in for your entire life.
Okay, I like that visual.
Right. You know exactly where every single piece of furniture is. If the power goes out and it's pitch black, you can still walk from the bed to the door without stubbing your toe.
Because you don't even have to think about it.
It requires zero conscious effort.
It's entirely instinctual. You don't think about the mechanics of walking, you just walk.
Precisely. But trying to think in a new language,
Yeah.
that is compared to sleeping in a stranger's house.
That's a very different vibe.
Very different. You wake up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water, and suddenly everything is a potential hazard.
You don't know where the light switches are.
You don't know the layout of the hallway.
Yeah.
You have to move incredibly slowly, using massive, massive amounts of conscious prefrontal cortex energy just to process your immediate physical environment.
And the brain hates that.
The brain absolutely hates expending that much energy. So when you're hit with a sentence in a new language, the brain sort of panics at the unfamiliarity of the stranger's house.
It wants to go back to the comfortable room.
Immediately. It retreats to the safety of the native language. It uses your mother tongue as a secure anchor to just make sense of all this overwhelming new data.
The stranger's house metaphor really isolates that feeling of hyper-awareness and unease. But I actually want to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
If the brain's default operating system is so aggressively geared towards safety, right? And the native language is the ultimate safe harbor, how can we possibly expect to bypass that internal translator without causing a complete neurological traffic jam?
It's a very fair question.
I mean, to use a totally different analogy, relying on that mental translation feels to me like driving down the highway with the handbrake pulled all the way up.
Oh, yeah. The friction is real.
Yes, technically, you are moving forward. You're making some kind of progress in the conversation, but you are actively fighting your own momentum.
And grinding the gears.
The friction is immense. The engine is screaming, and eventually the whole system is just going to overheat and burn out. But if you just rip the handbrake off entirely and take away the safety of the native language, isn't the brain just going to spin out of control?
It's exactly what happens when people try to force immersion way too quickly. And it's a phenomenal point.
So you can't just jump in the deep end.
Well, if you strip away the native language anchor in a high-stress environment like, say, being forced to stand up and speak in front of a room full of native speakers.
Total nightmare scenario.
Right. You trigger what linguist Stephen Krashen famously called the affective filter.
The affective filter. That's like an emotional barrier, right?
Yes. But it is not just a metaphor. It's a physiological reality. When you're thrust into that highly unfamiliar, high-stress linguistic situation, your amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, it literally lights up.
Like an alarm system going off.
Exactly. It perceives the failure to communicate as a genuine social threat. And when the amygdala is highly active, it essentially hijacks the entire system.
Wow.
It physically blocks the hippocampus, which is the part of your brain responsible for memory retrieval, from accessing the foreign vocabulary you spent hours studying.
Wait, really? It just blocks it?
Your brain literally cuts off access to new language because it's prioritizing escaping the stressful situation. Anxiety spikes, and learning just shuts down entirely.
So that's why you go completely blank. The vocabulary is actually in there somewhere, but the bridge to get to it is just out.
Exactly. So the solution to taking off the handbrake isn't to force yourself into these high-stakes, terrifying situations. The solution is to retrain how you interact with your immediate private environment.
You have to make the stranger's house feel familiar.
Yes. But one single room, one single piece of furniture at a time, in an environment where that affective filter is completely dormant.
Which brings us perfectly to the very first behavioral tweak Luna and Leo recommend in their deep dive. They call it becoming a stylish bilingual toddler.
I love that name.
The clinical term might be like self-narration, but I think the toddler visual is so much better. The premise is incredibly straightforward. You basically start describing your mundane, everyday actions in the new language.
Just narrating your life.
Yeah. You do it out loud if you're alone in your apartment, or you just run a silent monologue in your head if you're out in public.
The beauty of this is in its absolute simplicity. Like, imagine you're standing in your kitchen in the morning making breakfast.
Right. And you literally say to yourself out loud, I'm boiling the water, the cup is on the table, I need a spoon.
Yep.
Or maybe you're getting ready to leave the house and you say, where is my jacket? Oh, there it is. It's on the chair.
What's fascinating here is how this methodology systematically bypasses that translation trap we talked about by mimicking early childhood language acquisition.
How so?
Well, think about how a toddler actually learns their very first language. They don't have a pre-existing native language to act as a translation buffer, right?
No, they're starting from scratch.
And they certainly don't sit with a textbook memorizing grammar rules and verb conjugations. They acquire language through what we call embodied cognition.
Embodied cognition.
They walk around their physical environment, picking things up, pointing at them, touching them, and naming them.
So they're living the vocabulary, not just studying it on a page.
Precisely. When a toddler holds a cup and says cup, they are forging a direct neurological pathway between the physical sensory experience of that object, its weight, its temperature, its shape, and the acoustic sound of the word.
There's no middleman.
No middleman at all. But when we learn a second language as adults, we usually try to wire the new word, say taza, to the English word cup, and then the English word cup to the physical object.
We build a detour.
We build a massive detour. By narrating your life, you are forcing the brain to wire the Spanish or French or Japanese word directly to the physical sensory input. You see the steam rising from the kettle, you actually feel the heat of the handle, and you attach the new language directly to that exact sensory moment.
You are systematically firing the tiny assistant.
Exactly.
You're telling the brain, look, we don't need to route this information through English anymore. The physical object itself is the trigger. Conceptually, I mean, I am entirely on board with this. The neuroscience makes perfect sense.
But
But I have to play devil's advocate here because we really need to talk about the reality of actually doing this.
the awkwardness factor.
Isn't this just incredibly awkward? Imagine walking around your apartment talking to yourself about a spoon like you're the main character in some avant-garde indie film doing your own voiceover.
It definitely feels strange at first.
I can easily see someone trying this for exactly 30 seconds, feeling utterly ridiculous, and just abandoning the whole project.
I completely understand the hesitation.
Yeah.
But we have to look at why it feels awkward. It feels unnatural, not because it's a bad strategy, but because you are actively breaking a deeply, deeply ingrained neural habit.
Which is thinking in English.
You've spent decades running a silent, continuous loop in your native language. Interrupting that loop requires conscious friction. But the genius of the narration technique is that you are controlling the environment entirely. The stakes are effectively zero.
Because there's no one there to judge you. If you use the wrong verb tense to describe your toaster, who cares?
Exactly. That affective filter we talked about earlier, the amygdala. It is completely flatlined. You are in your own house. You are just reframing the exercise from a linguistic performance, which obviously carries the weight of potential embarrassment, to a deliberate mechanical practice.
Like doing reps at the gym.
You're treating your brain like a muscle that needs isolating.
I really like that framing. It shifts it from I am talking to myself like a crazy person to I am an engineer actively rewiring my brain's associative pathways in a totally controlled environment.
It gives the awkwardness a clear purpose.
And because you're dealing with things right in front of you, finding a jacket, making coffee, you aren't overloading your working memory. You aren't trying to debate like macroeconomics. You're literally just locating outerwear.
It keeps the cognitive load incredibly manageable. And that allows the brain to focus entirely on direct association rather than complex conceptual processing.
Okay, so solitary narration is this incredible tool for building that direct physical vocabulary link. It turns your private space into a language laboratory.
Which is a great first step.
But language is fundamentally a social